Players are ready. Let's head down to the feature match area for the finals here at GP Atlanta. Welcome to the finals here at GP Atlanta. Maria Bartholdi in the booth alongside Marshall Sutcliffe. And boy, we have a final set up for you here. Carlos Romao versus Raymond Perez. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong name. Cash Turner.
You were just reading the graphic.
I was.
But yes, that is in fact
There we
Cash
go.
Turner over there. Now Cash is playing, he's playing black-white, and he's got kind of we would call it like a go-wide deck. He can make a bunch of tokens and kind of swarm his opponent. Now Carlos is playing a much more vertical deck. He is playing nearly mono-green. He's on 11 forests, but he's got two other colors, swamps and plains, so white and black in his deck, though they're for just one card each. So it's kind of interesting to see how this thing turns out, because as you work your way through the deck lists here, you see that Carlos is nearly, really, I think he only has two non-green, non-colorless cards in the deck, which are Skywhaler Shot. And he's also got an Etherborn Marauder that he has decided to splash for, given that he has so many +1/+1 counter synergies in his green deck.
Cash now on 4 lands and only 2 Inventor's Goggles in play.
You got to figure he has a removal spell of some sort.
Yeah, there he does. Impeccable timing.
Yeah. Now you're going to hear us lower our voices a little bit. They've turned off the air conditioning here in the room, and it has gotten much, much quieter than it was. And we want to make sure that the players don't hear us.
Yeah,
here's a big play here, Maria.
Propeller Pioneer.
Yeah, which is going to pick up both copies.
Pairs of the goggles.
Hey, Four Eyes. But that makes a big flyer here. 5 toughness and 4 power. And that's going to be pretty tough for Carlos to deal with if he doesn't have that card right there.
Oh, Skywhaler Shot.
This is like the only way he has to deal with that right now.
Takes down the Pioneer, gets the Scry.
That was huge.
Yes.
Honestly, that's his only direct removal spell. The only other thing that he's got that can really directly deal with creatures is Hunt the Weak.
That's right. Oh, the Servo's going to get suited up here and get in for 3.
You look smart in those glasses.
He does.
Yeah. Servo's just down at the library.
Carlos has a Deadlock Trap in play with 2 energy.
Yeah, and when you're in Carlos's seat, you're pretty happy at this point. Right now, Cash hasn't really done a lot. He's now invested a lot of mana to equip up what's ultimately a pretty small creature, doesn't even have a profitable attack through the High Spire Artisan, and the Deadlock Trap is really good against equipment.
Yes, it is. Rush of Vitality saves the Servo there, gains Cash some life.
And it's going to kill the High Spire Artisan to clear the way for potentially more attacks, but Cash really needs to find another threat here.
He does. Visionary Augmenter.
It's got to be an Artificer, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
So if that's the case, he can sort of spread out these goggles if he wants.
Also needs to decide what he wants to do with that Fabricate trigger.
Correct. And this is an interesting and subtle decision that Cash has to make, because the Deadlock Trap really is good against equipment. And so if he piles everything onto a Visionary Augmenter, then it just makes it a ripe target to get tapped down a couple of times. And it could be a while before he can get in for damage. Additionally, he may want to just make servos here, given that the board is currently empty. And a very weird draw for Carlos Romao with only 1 forest. He is aggressively splashing with 3 plains and 3 swamps just for those 2 cards in his deck. A couple other sources of fixing in there as well, but you would expect to see more forests from him. And that could actually hurt him. He does have multiple double green cards.
Oh, there's another forest.
Okay, we'll probably see a Riparian Tiger here, maybe a Pima Outrider, something along those lines.
And Cash did decide to give 2 counters to the Augmenter.
And he kept both copies of the goggles on the servo. So he has decided to diversify his threats, not as much as he possibly could, but in 2 sort of big chunks. And there's that Tiger.
2 more energy for Carlos.
That could be a big deal as well. Carlos does not have to use his energy on the Riparian Tiger. when it attacks, and he can instead just save it up for the Deadlock Trap, which is acting as a removal spell in his green deck here.
It absolutely is, and with so many ways to make energy in Carlos's deck, that Deadlock Trap only needs one to lock something down.
Another interesting thing for Cash here is that he's going to want to be very precise about when and how he decides to go to attack. So we saw before he just sort of jammed his creature in the red zone, and Carlos sort of paused him because he had the Deadlock Trap.
Yep.
And you don't want to give away what your intentions are in this situation. You just want to tell your opponent, I'd like to go to attacks, and then force Carlos to decide if he'd like to use the trap or not. If you just turn both of your creatures sideways, then it kind of shows him, well, you probably have a trick of some sort, because you wouldn't just jam them right into the Tiger necessarily.
Deadlock Trap locks down the Augmenter. Both pairs of goggles move back over to the servo.
So it's a 3/5 servo, which doesn't actually block the Tiger if Carlos is happy to use some energy here.
And he
which it
does.
looks like is what he's done.
6/6 Trampler. Cash is going to take the hit, followed up by another Riparian Tiger.
Not surprised to see that. He's got 3 copies of Riparian Tiger, does Carlos Romao, in this deck. He is, of course, running all 3 of them. I haven't actually gone through every other deck list to see, but it felt like Carlos was the only green drafter at the table. Everything he passed came back, and that was with him taking green cards out of the packs themselves.
Yeah, he got cards passed to him like a Pima Outrider extremely late in the draft.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually just going to take a quick look while this deck, or excuse me, where this match comes developing here.
Cash Turner, currently the active player. See a Filigree Familiar in his hand. He's going to attack with the Augmenter. No tap from Carlos. Plays a Swamp. Here comes the Familiar. Going to gain 2 life.
Yeah, I just looked through all the deck lists we have for the top 8 in front of us, which I believe is all of them. 0 for us outside of Carlos.
My gosh, he was the only green drafter.
I believe so.
What a good read by Carlos. Cash, pass the turn. End of turn, Deadlock Trap, you're familiar. Draw. It is a Kujar Seed Sculptor. He's got 2 in hand currently. He's going to attack with his Tigers. Not choosing to pump them up.
No, just
Servo
2/4/4
will block one.
tramplers.
Yep.
Yeah. So Cash does have a block on 1, though it won't actually kill the Tiger, as it's only 3 power for Cash. But he does have 5 toughness, so he will only take 4 damage in the exchange.
Oof, Arborback Stomper.
Jeez.
Gain some life.
And this is one of the big benefits when you're the only person in a color, is that any of the really powerful uncommons that get open usually end up in your pile as well. You're kind of at the mercy at the packs at that point, but you'll gladly throw yourself to the mercy of the packs if you're just going to get all of the ones in a color for a draft.
Absolutely. 5/4 Trampler gains 5 life when it enters the battlefield. Looks like Cash is holding a copy of Built to Last. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Center effect gets indestructible. Currently applies to 2 of Cash's creatures. Deciding, I think, if he's going to move some goggles over, which he does. Pair now on the Visionary Augmenter.
Yeah, I did just double confirm with our deck list there,
Yeah.
by the way, Maria. And yeah, he is the only player playing for us in the top 8.
That's
So,
incredible.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see it after what you and I witnessed in the draft portion. I mean, we were just falling off of our chairs with all that stuff that was coming back for Carlos. But still, even then, you always wonder, well, is there somebody else, just maybe playing it like as a secondary color? Or
Here we see Deadlock Trap blocking down the Visionary Augmenter at the end of the turn. You can take a look at the card there. Carlos down to 1 energy. We'll see if he can find a way to make more. We
Does
know
have a lot of ways in his deck.
he does. Currently holding 2 Kujar Seed Sculptors, able to distribute some more counters to really keep applying pressure to cash if he chooses. There's one of them.
Yeah, you can just make the Tigers 5 power.
There's the other.
Now he has 3 5-power Tramplers there.
Wow.
Boom.
This has just got to be terrifying for cash.
Yeah, he is just getting stomped at this point by these massive green Tramplers.
And you said, Marshall, that you really favor green right now in draft. And here's a reason why.
Yeah, I just think it's the best individual color. You know, it's still figuring out exactly how it matches up with the other colors and which pair is the best and that kind of thing. But I'll tell you what, if you just go down the list of green commons, they're great. And,
Yeah.
you know, he's playing a bunch of them here. A couple of the Tigers and the Seed Sculptors are both 2 cards that I think are excellent. You know, when you get up into the uncommons, you get the Arborback Stomper, which is, I think, one of the better uncommons in the set as well. You know, and we haven't even seen the other stuff that Carlos is playing here. You know, he does have a Pima Outrider in this deck. He's got a Bristling Hydra
Right?
in this deck, which we haven't seen either. The Elegant Edge Crafters is another common that I think is very good, or uncommon. It's very good as well.
Cash Turner using Built to Last on his double blocks there. Looks like Carlos had ordered the servo first.
Okay. So that's going to help him at least start mitigating
Took a chunk, though.
the bleed here, yeah. The Stomper no longer a threat, but 2 5/5 dragons with Cash Turner down to 6 life.
He will draw a card off the Filigree Familiar when it dies. So that's a little ray of hope.
We're keeping our voice down in the booth, by the way, for those of you noticing, just because they've turned off some of the AC in the hall, and it's actually gotten quiet. We're relatively close to the players, and we want to make sure that we don't interfere with the tournament by talking about cards in hand where the players can hear us. Our producer told us to make sure we weren't too loud, so that's why we're keeping it down a little bit. Hopefully you can turn up the volume, and when something big happens, we'll scream and you'll get mad at us.
Carlos taps 4. It's a hunt the week.
Carlos is in the tank about exactly what he wants to hunt down. He decides to servo.
Yeah, doesn't want Cash to draw that card.
Yeah, this could be it.
Everything coming on in.
And he's also going to tap one of the only blockers left.
That'll do it. Carlos takes game 1 here in the finals.
That was impressive. Carlos Romao was able to stabilize a slow start from Cash Turner, and then it was just boom booms from there on out. Beef City, man. He had so much. I mean,
Did?
like, if he had enough energy, he had 6/6 trample, 6/6 trample, 5/5 trample. That was before any +1/+1 counters
Yeah.
or augmenting, just on the board. And that's really, really tough for Cash. I think this matchup is going to be very difficult for Cash Turner to beat. He really is trying to take advantage of a bunch of small creatures. Now, if he can make those small creatures quicker than Carlos can get on the battlefield and just go wider, where Carlos is like, I'll pay 5 mana to play something big.
Right.
Right, where Cash is like, I'll pay 4 mana to play 3 small things. Then he may be able to take advantage of, like, play a removal spell, attack you for a bunch, and just overwhelm Carlos. But, you know, I got to say, if we get to that mid to late stage, Carlos's creatures are just so much bigger. And, you know, Cash doesn't have too much in the way of great removal. He is leaning pretty hard on some of his combat tricks like Rush of Vitality, you know, those type of things. He's got a pair of Die Young, but that doesn't kill a lot
Not
on
too good.
Carlos's side that Cash really cares about. So that's not great for him. And again, you know, I mentioned the combat tricks he's got Built to Last. That type of card is what he's really trying to get through with. You know, again, Impeccable Timing, another card that just doesn't quite do exactly what you want it to do. against a deck with a bunch of big green creatures. Now, his overall power level's relatively high. He's got some kind of mediums, floating around in here as well. He's playing an Accomplished Automaton in this deck, which is a card that, you're kind of like, fine, I guess I'll play it if I have to. But, he's got some ways to sneak in damage. He's got a Key to the City.
Okay.
So if you can go wide early and then get Carlos down to like under 10 life, he may be able to just sneak through, 3/6/9 or something like that to get him. Also, flying does look pretty good against Carlos. And, we see a little bit of flying out of white with a Sky Swirl Harrier and a Propeller Pioneer.
Snare Thopter as well.
There you go. So, it's not all downside here for Cash, but I do think that he has the worst side of this matchup, and it will be difficult for him to beat these huge creatures. The other thing is that Carlos can have big creatures very early.
Yes,
like he has the Dream Curve. You and I have actually been talking about this all weekend, Maria. If everything lined up perfect, right? And I don't even mean perfect, but just like good.
Yeah.
So he can start things off, and he can turn 2.
Seed Sculptor.
He can play the Kujar Seed Sculptor. He's got 2 of those, so that's not even that hard for him. Turn 3, he's got 1 Rhino, the Thriving Rhino, so he can play that. He's got 1 Pima Outrider for turn 4. He's got 3 Riparian Tigers for turn 5, and he even has...
Could play Bristling Hider on 4 if you wanted.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I like how you think, and then he's got the Elegant Edgecrafters for 6.
Yep.
So, that's a 2 to 6 that is going to be almost impossible for Cash to beat. Now, again, it's not likely that Carlos is going to be able to just chain all of those together. But, hey, take 2 of those out of the mix, and it still looks
fine.
Pretty good, yeah. And as you mentioned, he also has upgrades at some of those ones, including that Bristling Hydra.
Yep, absolutely. Cash running a Kambal console of allocation, but not a whole lot of spells to really, from Carlos to really make use of that card.
Not a lot, you're right. Again, Carlos deciding to splash for an Aetherborn Marauder, which is a pretty aggressive splash. I mean, he's running 3 swamps in his deck just for that 1 black card.
He is, yeah.
I'm curious to see if he ends up keeping that in. That seems a little ambitious to me. Like, I get it with the Sky Whaler shot because that card's going to kill something relevant most of the time, but the Aetherborn Marauder is a pretty specific card. And even though Carlos does have a lot of synergies with it, I wonder if you want to disrupt your mana base,
All right, and we're underway here in Game 2 of the finals, GP Atlanta. Here's Carlos's turn 2. Sage of Shayla's Claim. $10,000 on the line. Turn 3 play from Cash, Foundry Screecher.
That's good.
It is.
Flyers.
That's what he needs.
That's one of the ways he can actually get this job done.
The Sage is going to crash in for 2.
There's 1 Highspire Artisan in Carlos Romao's deck.
Oh, is there? Long Tusk Cub.
Oh, did we mention the Long Tusk Cub?
Yeah, that's another fine play.
While we were upgrading that common curve.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a little awkward for Carlos. He would have loved to have that on turn 2.
Propeller Pioneer.
Yeah, and he should just... I really think he should just put the counter on the Propeller Pioneer here. The servo isn't going to interact super well. I mean, yes, it will hold back the 2-1, and that's probably what Cash is thinking. But, I'm looking at it, and it just feels like Cash needs to race. I think that his best chance of winning is just pounding in for as much damage as possible.
And hoping Carlos can't deal with it.
Yeah. The one upside that he does get is that he gets 1 extra damage right now by making a servo because it does pump up his Screecher by 1 and maybe would keep it pumped up indefinitely. Look, if the servo just stays on the battlefield, then it ends up being the same.
I don't know about you. Last turn, I'm really also tempted to die young. That Cub.
He has a Die Young in his hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, remember, Carlos led with the Sage of Shayla's Claim. So, Carlos can just say, sure, I'll put a counter on it.
Yeah,
right?
You're right.
I think he maybe is thinking about that, and this is just tough because Cash has immediately a very poignant decision for this match. He has to decide whether he's going to be racing or not. If not, he'll probably just have to block the servo on the Sage, because that's what he put it there for.
Yep.
And then just start pounding in the air and just say, all right, I'm going to ignore the long tusk cub. Hopefully it doesn't do too much. And I'm just going to try to race. And that's what he did.
Bristling Hydra.
Oh, no.
Turn 4.
Oh, no.
6 energy. This long tusk cub can get out of control really fast.
Let's not forget about the
Yeah,
Hydra.
there we go. Hydra also able to get out of control.
Indeed.
Equally fast.
Yeah, now this is a good play from Cash. He almost went to attacks first, but remembered that he'd rather have the servo on the battlefield because the Screecher is an extra damage.
Right. His follow-up play, Ambitious Etherborn. Carlos is going to rumble.
6 energy.
There is,
It's just really tough for Cash. I mean, his most obvious block here is to put both creatures in front of the Bristling Hydra. Because the Bristling Hydra is a 4/3. And he can currently put 2 +1/+1 counters on it using up all the energy.
Carlos going to give a
It
counter.
looks like Cash has not blocked, which I kind of like, to be honest. Like, he's going to be dead in 2 turns, but he also maybe can find a way to survive or kill one of these creatures and get in for a ton of damage here. Like, he can attack for 10. Oh. No. Nice Fire Artisan.
That hurts.
It hurts so much.
0-3 blocker. It has reach. And just to note,
Yeah.
Cash is holding an Inspired Charge.
Yeah, he was going to try to go for the win there. Now, does he still have it? That's the question. Let's take a look. 2 blockers, 1 for a flyer, 1 for the Etherborn on the ground. And that only gets Cash in for 7. So that's not going to do it.
Nope.
He would kill 2 creatures, but he is facing lethal on the other side of the battlefield. So unfortunately for Cash, I liked his play there of just saying, okay, show me something. But
right.
Unfortunately, Carlos was like, okay.
No problem. Cash also holding a Rush of Vitality.
Yeah, the crazy part is that if Carlos had just played a single creature there, Cash would win with this attack. Like a single ground creature, he would win.
All right, here come the Etherborn, the Propeller Pioneer, and the Foundry Screecher. Herald of the Fair. I believe has pumped up the Pioneer.
Okay.
See how Carlos wants to block.
Man, that was so close for Cash.
It
like if
was.
that was Riparian Tiger, it would have been game.
Yep.
He hits for 9 in the air with the flyers and then 3 with the servo after the Etherborn gets blocked. And that's exactly 12. But it wasn't. Carlos played very well here. Give himself the most amount of blockers.
Important Rush of Vitality still in Cash's hand.
Okay, he didn't play it here. And that Herald of the Fair is going to have to do overtime. Because, for example, this is so close.
It is.
Carlos, if he gets 2 more energy, can attack with a lethal Bristling Hydra and or a lethal Long Tusk Cub. But Cash has just enough blocks to not die to that. He would be at 1.
Wow.
He would chump block the Cub and chump block the Bristling Hydra as well. Now, that's only if Carlos had 2 more energy would this stuff be relevant. As it sits, Cash is fine.
Yeah, 3 copies of Riparian Tiger in Carlos's deck, too.
Yeah, he's got a Thriving Rhino. Oh, this is so close, Maria.
Wow. I did not expect it to be this close.
Look at Carlos.
Wow.
He knows how close this is. This is just absurd.
You can see him doing the math in his head there.
Wow, Cash looks really calm.
Look at Cash. Just staring at him.
I mean, Cash knows, like, hey, man,
Yeah.
I got what I got. The rush of vitality changes the math dramatically here
Yes, it
as
does.
well.
Yes, it does. And if you're Carlos, you've got to be worried about a card like that.
Yep.
Hunt the week.
Where did he put the counter?
It looked like the High Spire Artisan fighting the servo. There comes the rush of vitality.
Yeah, Carlos knew that was coming. That's really interesting because that is a fight card. So that means that Cash actually gains 2 life and has an indestructible 2-powered life-linking servo to block as well to gain 2 more, which means that Carlos just doesn't attack at all.
Yeah, that's true.
But Carlos, having put that +1/+1 counter on the High Spire Artisan, has set up for this. Carlos is really one step ahead here, even though the cards that Cash has are very good, and Cash is jamming all of his creatures in
All
the red zone.
sideways. Yeah, there's a look at Inspired Charge in Cash's hand. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn.
Yeah, should be good, right? That's 2/4. Let's see, how do these blocks end up post-combat is the question. It's all lethal, right?
It is, yeah.
That's 7. Unless Carlos brought in Bring Down or something.
There it is, Inspired Charge. Carlos scoops him up. Cash Turner ties it up 1 game apiece here in the final.
That was so close.
Wow.
Look at Cash.
Just
Cool
as a cucumber.
Man. That guy has ice water in his veins.
We're going to get a game 3 here, Marshall.
Crazy, too, because, watching it, it felt like Carlos knew about each of those cards.
Yes,
and was playing around them in a pretty effective way. And still, Cash got him. Look at that smile from Carlos. Like, really, man?
Yeah. And Cash was up against it in that game. Carlos, big, beefy green creatures down on the battlefield. Cash got there with his flyers in the end. An Inspired Charge indeed. Once again, $10,000 on the line here in the finals of GP Atlanta. Championship trophy, too, sure would be nice on the mantle.
I don't know how you can be that calm.
I mean, if you think about it, they've played a lot of Magic.
Yeah, they could just be tired.
They're just tired.
Oh, man.
Yeah, thinking about sideboard options, even going into game 3 here, potentially, is what I'd read in Cash's mind right now.
Yeah, I was taking a look at Carlos's list. Not seeing a ton of options here. He can go bigger with elegant edge crafters and durable handicraft. That doesn't seem to be what he wants to do, though, against this deck.
No, I don't think so. Cash knows his flyers just have to survive.
Could try to raise him. He's got like a larger than life. Again, I just don't really like that kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty risky. It's a big game for both these players down in our feature match area.
It's as big as they get.
By getting into the top 8, Pro Tour invites all around as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cash already talking about heading to Dublin. Heard him down there in the feature match area.
Yeah, he's excited.
A lot on the line after a long weekend of some amazing Magic.
Yeah, it's our first glimpse at the high-level play for Kaladesh Limited,
is.
and I have to say it's been a very interesting glimpse. I cannot wait for next weekend. We certainly hope you'll join us at the Pro Tour in Hawaii. That's on Friday. Friday morning, bright and early. Usually we start about 9 a.m. local time, somewhere in that range. Start off with a booster draft, and it will be Kaladesh, just like what we're seeing here.
Yeah, a lot of the players using GP Atlanta sort of as testing grounds for the Pro Tour. A lot of lessons learned, I'm sure, across many of these drafts here on day 2. But people still figuring the format out. Still very new.
A lot of different takes on the format in the early stages here, which sometimes is a harbinger of a good format because it means you can do a whole lot of things.
Right?
Sometimes people just haven't figured it out what the really good things are yet.
Players draw the opening hands. Carlos going to throw it back.
It's good news for Cash Turner if he's got a keeper here. He certainly does.
Yep. Looks good to me.
Man. Is Cash going to beat a world champion here?
He could. Yeah, you never want to take a mulligan in the finals. Even if you do get a scry. We talked about this earlier. In the semis, Cash kept a one-lander and got there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has been running it up, and he just needs to do it for one more game to be our champion. That last game was about as close as they get.
Yeah. Nearly mono green versus black white. Let's see if Carlos likes this hand better. He does. Scries to the bottom. And we're off. Carlos leads off with a forest. Cash with a swamp. Turn 2 play for Carlos. Seed Sculptor, making a 2-3. Cash, no turn 2 play.
Okay, a little slow here for Cash.
Carlos gets in for 2.
But nothing on turn 3.
Mono green, represented over there.
Which is typical.
Yep. Cash contemplating his turn 3 play here. Glint Sleeve Artisan, making a servo.
Interesting that he decided to make a servo here. He's facing down a 2-3 creature he'd like to start attacking and or blocking. He is going to double block.
Ornamental Courage, the play from Carlos. +1/+3.
He's got one of those in his main deck, and he did good work there, trading for a proper 3-drop with Glint Sleeve Artisan there.
I think we're going to see potentially a Propeller Pioneer from Cash.
Yeah, I believe so. I think he's got 2 different options here, but yeah, I think he wants to just get that Pioneer down while Carlos does nothing. I mean, Carlos, that was his whole play for the turn, was that.
Wow, it was.
Ornamental Courage. Once again, Cash deciding instead of having a 3-powered flyer, he'd rather have a 2-powered flyer and a 1/1 on the ground.
Meanwhile, the Seed Sculptor gets in again.
This is really promising for Cash Turner. Carlos has done nothing. The last 2 turns, he spent a grand total of 1 mana thus far.
Cash coming in for 3.
No ambitious Etherborn for Cash? Nothing?
No play.
What is going on here? The players aren't playing anything.
There's a Swamp for Carlos.
Has to be a Riparian Tiger now for Carlos
I mean,
Romao.
I would hope so. No, he passed the turn back.
What in the world? Cash did nothing. Carlos did nothing. They both had 5 mana.
In comes the Propeller Pioneer. Follow-up play, Ducara's Scavenger.
Does he even want that Glint Sleeve
I
Artisan?
don't know.
It's kind of a medium draw at this point. I guess he'll just take any action
Sure.
he can get since he didn't have anything going on.
Carlos isn't doing anything.
Man,
Well, there's An Aetherborn Marauder going to steal that counter.
It's a big draw here for Carlos, and this is a huge turn for Cash because if he has a way to get rid of that thing, he could really be in the driver's seat.
He has a Die Young in hand.
That's not
enough.
quite enough. No fear.
Attacking.
3-3 flying lifelink is a big deal here. Yeah, he's just going to have to 2-for-1 himself and use a Die Young to finish it off. Wow, Blossoming Defense from Carlos Romao would be a huge blowout if that's what he has. And it's entirely possible that he does, given that he had cards in hand and couldn't cast anything before.
There it is.
Oh,
there it is.
Savage.
Glint Sleeve Artisan
that
from
is
Cash.
A good old-fashioned 2-for-1 there from Carlos Romao. That is brutal.
And exactly what he needed to get back in this. We're going to see what he decides to do with the Glint Sleeve Artisan's Fabricate trigger. Going to give it a counter.
That was gross.
Yeah, it was. Blossoming Defense, just an all-star for this draft for Carlos. In comes the Marauder for 3.
This is the type of card that you just cannot race if you're Cash Turner without the help of a lot of creatures on the ground plus an Inspired Charge or nothing. He just needs to find a removal spell.
Deadlock Trap was the play. Cash Turner swings in. See if he has a way to deal with that.
Well,
Marauder.
tapping 7 mana is promising in any case.
Accomplished Automaton.
Okay. And is it going to bring a friend along? You've seen that Cash has preferred to make servos most of the time.
Yes.
And the reason he's doing that is that he's trying to leverage his mass pump spells. You know, he mainly is trying to just steal victories here with Inspired Charge, which we saw last game.
We did.
Curious to see what he does with the Fabricate here, though. A 5/7 usually big enough to get through everything, but he also sees that there's a Deadlock Trap sitting on the battlefield right now.
Oh, Appetite of the Unnatural. Takes down the Automaton.
Wow. God, that's disgusting.
Gains 2 more life off of that.
You know, as good of a start as this was for Cash and as bad as it was for Carlos, it does feel like Carlos is really starting to grip. I mean, that was huge.
It was huge.
And here's a Tiger, or excuse me, a Stomper.
Gained 5 life.
Yeah, Cash is not racing this time. He may win the game, but he's not racing.
It's definitely swung back in Carlos's favor. Cash, plenty of land to work with. Can he find some way to continue to put the pressure on Carlos? Three flying lifelinker, 5/4 trampler.
That is a whole handful. He's also still got that Deadlock Trap with 2 energy available as well.
Just has to pass back.
Carlos could be a couple of top decks away from just winning this thing.
He's going to swing in. The Cash is to take it.
The Dukar Scavenger doing a very nice job matching up against the Stomper there. Matches up perfectly as a 4/6 versus a 5/4.
See, Cash is holding a Gear Shift Ace. Doesn't do a lot on this board.
Sure doesn't.
He's going to attack with the Crocodile. Here comes the Ace.
It's a risky move.
Yeah.
Carlos could just go for it here.
Deadlock Trap. Lock down your Artisan.
Yeah. Carlos has a lot of life total to play with, so taking the 4 was no big deal. He kind of, you know, Cash kind of tapped that for him.
Gear per Guide.
Oh, Gear per Guide is going to make
Makes the Stomper
blocks
unblockable.
very difficult.
Rush of Vitality is going to pump up the Gear Shift Ace big enough to block the Stomper.
First strike's going to happen. And he's going to gain 3 life to go to 10.
Let's see what he draws. Looks like a Paraland. Extends the hand. Carlos Romao takes it in 3 games to be your champion here at Grand Prix Atlanta.
Wow, fantastic stuff. Super intense. We can actually talk freely now as well. Again,
yes, we can.
We do apologize. We had to keep our voices down to make sure that the players couldn't hear us, but that was super, super exciting stuff. Really awesome.
Wow, what a finals, Marshall. So exciting. Some really close games there as well.
Game 2 particularly was needle thin. That was very, very close.
Yeah, we can hear Carlos's friends celebrating over there in the feature match area. Must feel great. $10,000 goes to Carlos Romao, world champion back in 2002, making a comeback here, making himself known at Grand Prix Atlanta. Well, Marshall, we've had a great tournament here this weekend.
Fantastic stuff.
Saw a lot of sealed, a lot of draft. What have you learned watching this much Magic?
Well, I've learned a lot. This is a really good time to gather a bunch of information, especially heading into the Pro Tour, about what people think about the format and how it actually plays out when you watch it. And the whole weekend, the question I had and the thing that I've been thinking about and that I've really seen a lot here is these polar opposites, right?
Right.
You've got these decks, especially in a draft, less so in sealed, but mainly in draft, that are kind of crazy, right? We saw panharmonicons all over the place, people with 30 energy and throwing them into all these crazy artifacts that are bouncing things, or maybe it's just a blue-white deck that's blinking and cloud blazers are going, and you're doing all this kind of cool stuff that really dominates the late part of the game in different fashions, but the key is that it gives you this inevitability, these engines in the late part of the game. Then on the other side of the spectrum, Pain Train.
Yeah.
We saw Renegade Freighters and 2-drops and pump spells and removal spells and cheap curve and people just slamming things into the red zone over and over. And it's interesting to see both of these things can work.
Yeah, they can.
We saw that.
We saw it happen.
We saw these decks have success on both levels, and we even were lucky enough to see those two types just bang into each other a couple of times with mixed results on both. We saw draw out of one. We saw the aggro deck win the other one. But these are the type of things that I'm thinking about, right?
Right.
When I'm going to sit down to do drafts this week before I go to the Pro Tour or tonight after I'm off work, these are the type of decks that I'm going to be looking at, because what I really want to know is, I know what the aggro decks look like, and I know what makes them tick. They're a lot more apparent, right?
Right.
But when you're building a deck around modules or blink effects or these type of things, what are the ones that are good? What are the ones that you really want? And what are the ones that you'll run and you'll be like, okay, this kind of works, but it's not really what I want to be doing? What are the good energy cards, right? Which are the big energy payoffs? These are the type of things that I want to figure out, and then I'm going to be asking around about it, is not all of these cute decks, these kind of crazy synergistic decks, are going to be good. Some of them are going to be better than others and worth going for, and some of them are going to prove a little bit too fragile, that if you do face a Renegade Freighter, God forbid, something like that, that you're going to end up losing. So for me, I'm really going to concentrate on sussing out these decks, and I'm also going to use it as an excuse to draft a bunch of them on Magic Online.
Do you need an excuse, Marshall?
Yeah, I didn't really need it, but work research calls, and so I'm going to be in there trying to figure out, which of these cool decks, these synergistic decks, are the good ones. Yeah,
a lot of interesting cards that we got to see played here this weekend. You mentioned Panharmonicon as one. Has any card stood out to you as really kind of a surprise or an all-star in a way that you didn't think you would like that card going in?
The modules.
Yeah.
I've been keeping a close eye on those and trying to sort them out because they're so weird.
They are.
Just as cards, they do, like you get an energy and then you can return your creature. Like, why? What is that about? And like one of them's like giving you counters when you get energy, and you can get energy to get a count. And, when I first see these type of cards, I look at them and they kind of all blur together for me.
Sure.
Right? They all have a similar name. They're all artifacts. They all have these kind of weird things going on. And also, they don't look very good. right? Like when you read those cards, those aren't the ones that jump off the page to you where you're like, wow, I want to have that in my deck. When you read, an Arborback Stomper, you're
Right.
like, whoa, that's sweet.
I'm playing that.
I want to play that card, or you read, Sky Whaler Shot, and you're like, yeah, that looks really good. Kill something, scry, it kills a lot
I'm
of
in.
relevant. You're right. These are the ones that just jump off the page. But when you're like, okay, decoction module. It's like, well, this is weird. It probably does something. I don't really know. I'll look at it later. But later's now. Now it's time to start actually figuring out, where those type of cards fit in. And I think that's where I'm going to start are on the modules. I want to see which one goes where and how good they are in the place that they go.
It was really interesting to me to see a lot of Inventor's Goggles running around this weekend as well.
Definitely.
+1, +2.
Mm-hmm.
We saw them run in a whole bunch of different kinds of decks. We saw them down there in the feature match area.
We did, and I think that card is a little underrated right now. You don't need to first pick it, but it's pretty good, and I think it's a card that we're going to be seeing throughout the course of the format.
All right, well, we've got an interview all set up with the winner here of GP Atlanta, Carlos Romao. Let's head down to the feature match area with Tim Willoughby.
I'm here on the floor with our champion here at GP Atlanta, Carlos Romao. Now, Carlos, we got a chance to watch your draft. It looked like it went fairly straightforwardly, almost mono green. And having won 2 GPs in a row, your Pro Tour season for this year must be looking pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy, and I think I'm in pretty good shape to come back to the train. I'm testing for that. I have already 8 Pro points, 2 Pro Tour invites. Have just a few Pro points more to lock the 3rd Pro Tour, so I'm pretty confident about my back to the train.
A lovely place to be, and you're flying across to Hawaii right after this weekend. Is it going to be a frantic week of testing before we get onto the Pro Tour next weekend?
Yeah, we're gonna test before the Pro Tour. We're gonna spend the whole week testing, maybe hang out a little bit because it's Hawaii, you have to chill out a little bit. But after the Pro Tour, we're gonna stay over there for 4 more days, so we can have testing and fun. That's fine.
It sounds good, and of course, by the looks of things, you're already feeling fairly happy with this limited format. How has Kaladesh been for you thus far?
Oh, it's been great. Actually, we test a lot before coming here. We test a lot of drafts, even more than standard, and I feel pretty confident about my draft skills to this set, and also my teammates are doing very, very good. We did 6-0, 5-1, 5-1, a lot of 5-1s from the testing team, and we also have Marcio Carvalho from Portugal. He won the European GP, so I think we are in pretty good shape for drafts.
Well, that's how our Pro Tour is going to be starting on Friday. We hope you're going to get a chance to join it, but I will pass things back now to Maria and Marshall in the booth. Congratulations to you, Carlos Romao.
Congratulations again to Carlos Romao, our champion
Great stuff.
here at GP Atlanta.
Yes.
Well, Marshall, it's been quite a weekend.
It has.
Here in Atlanta.
You did great.
Thank you. My
Your
first time in the booth. I
Yeah.
got to thank you, Marshall. You made it easy.
That was fun.
It was great commentating with you.
I'm lucky to have you as a booth partner.
Well,
It was
thank
really
you.
fun. Yeah.
Well, we want to say thank you to everybody who helped make this event possible, the judges, the staff, and of course you at home, the viewers. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, Pro Tour starts on Friday, 9 a.m. local time. Don't miss it. It's going to be amazing.
PT Kaladesh, you're going to want to see it.
Booster draft and standard in Hawaii, of all places. It's going to be great. Marshall, may the Cloud Blazers be with you,
Thank you.
on your drafts and with all of you out there at home. Thank you so much for watching us.
Thank you.
Good night from GP Atlanta.
See ya.